The call came at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, and I almost didn't answer it. I was already half asleep, curled on my side of the bed, our bed, though it had been feeling more like my bed for the past 3 weeks, when my phone lit up the ceiling. Unknown number. Chicago area code, but not one I recognized. I almost set it back down. Something made me pick up. Hello? A pause. Then a woman's voice, smooth and unhurried, like she'd rehearsed this. Is this Lee's wife? I sat up. I'm sorry, who is this? This is Bridget. Another pause, shorter. I think we need to talk. I didn't sleep at all after that. My husband had been in Portland for 3 weeks. That was what he told me before he left. A consulting project, a client his firm had been chasing for 2 years, finally ready to sign. He'd kissed me on the forehead the morning he left, told me he'd call every night, told me he'd be back by the 15th. He was a project manager at a mid-size logistics firm, the kind of steady, reliable work that matched who I thought he was. Steady, reliable. The kind of man who came home when he said he would. We'd been married 4 years. We met in our late 20s the way a lot of people meet in Chicago, through mutual friends at a rooftop party. Too much wine, a conversation that didn't end until 2 in the morning. We got engaged after 18 months. We bought a condo in Lincoln Square 2 years ago. We had a rescue dog named, well, the dog's name doesn't matter. What matters is that I believed I knew the man I had built a life with. That first week he was gone. He called every night like he promised. The second week, it dropped to every other night. By the third week, the calls came maybe twice total, and when I asked about it, he said the project was bleeding into evenings, that the client was demanding, that he was exhausted and barely making it to dinner before collapsing. I believed him. I want to be honest about that. I believed him because I wanted to believe him and because I didn't have a reason not to, or I thought I didn't. On the last Wednesday of his third week away, I called to ask what time his flight home was on Friday. His phone rang 4 times. I was already composing a voicemail in my head when someone picked up. Not him. A woman. Calm, composed, with the kind of voice that told me immediately this wasn't an accident, wasn't a pocket dial, wasn't some intern answering her boss's phone. She said, "Hello," like she'd been expecting a call. I said, "Hi, I'm looking for my husband. Is he around?" A beat. 2 beats. "Your husband?" she said. "Yes, this is his number. Who is this?" And then she said something that made the floor feel like it dropped 3 inches beneath me. She said, "He's not available right now, but I'd like to know, who told you he was your husband?" I hung up. I sat on the kitchen floor. I don't know how I got there. I was standing at the counter a second ago, and I just sat there with my back against the cabinet and my phone in both hands and a sound in my ears like water. Then I called back, straight to voicemail. I called twice more. Voicemail both times. I texted him, "Call me. Now." And then I sat there and waited. He didn't call back that night. I need to tell you who I was before all of this, because I think it matters. I was not the kind of woman who checked her husband's phone. I was not suspicious by nature. If anything, the people who knew me best would have said my flaw was the opposite. I trusted too easily, too completely. I gave people the benefit of the doubt past the point where doubt had earned its seat at the table. My mother used to say I had a generous spirit. I used to take that as a compliment. What I did after I hung up the phone and sat on the kitchen floor was not what most people would do. I didn't spiral into Google searches. I didn't call my best friend and cry for an hour. I got up, made a cup of tea I didn't drink, and started thinking. I am, by profession, a paralegal at a family law firm on the north side of Chicago. I have spent 5 years watching people's marriages fall apart in documents, in depositions, in the quiet, devastated paperwork of dissolution. I know what evidence looks like. I know what it's for. And I know that when a woman answers your husband's phone and questions your claim to him, you do not show your hand. Not yet. I called Bridget back the next morning. She picked up on the second ring. Her full name was Bridget Callahan. She was 34, 2 years older than me. She lived in Portland. She had been seeing my husband for, as she told me in a voice that was remarkably steady, just over 2 years. 2 years. Our 4th anniversary had been in March. She told me he'd introduced himself with a slightly different last name, close enough to be a variation, different enough to build a wall between his 2 lives. She told me she hadn't known about me until 6 weeks ago when she found a photograph on his laptop of the two of us at a friend's wedding, me in a pale green dress, his arm around me, both of us laughing. She'd confronted him. He'd told her I was a cousin. She said she hadn't entirely believed him. She said she'd been sitting with it, waiting, watching. She said when she saw my number come through on his phone the night before, she decided she was done waiting. I asked her if he was there in her apartment. She said yes. I asked her if she knew he had a wife in Chicago. She said, I do now. We talked for 47 minutes. I took notes on a legal pad, the same way I'd do at work, neat bullet points with dates and details, because it was the only way I knew how to hold myself together. By the end of the call, we'd agreed on 2 things. We would not tell him what we knew, not yet, and we would both start gathering whatever we had. She had 2 years of texts, receipts from restaurants, a key to her apartment he'd had made without asking. I had 4 years of shared finances, a mortgage, a marriage certificate, and 5 years of professional experience watching exactly how this unravels in court. I called my attorney the next morning, the one I'd worked alongside long enough that she took my call immediately, before I'd finished explaining, and said, "Come in this afternoon." I went in that afternoon. By Friday morning, when my husband's flight landed at O'Hare, I had been busy. He came home in a good mood. That is the detail that still sits in my chest like something sharp. He came home in a good mood. He dropped his bag at the door, picked up the dog, scratched behind her ears, and called out to me like everything was ordinary. Like he was just a man coming home from a work trip, like the past 3 weeks had been exactly what he said they were. I was sitting in the living room. I had made the choice deliberately. The armchair, not the couch, because I wanted to be looking directly at the door when he walked in. I had made sure there were no dishes in the sink, no disorder, nothing that would give him anything to comment on or redirect toward. The apartment was quiet and still and clean. He came around the corner and saw me sitting there, and for just a half second something crossed his face. Not guilt exactly, more like a recalibration. A quick internal adjustment that I recognized, now, for what it was. Then he smiled. "Hey, you, why are you sitting there like you're waiting for me?" "I am waiting for you," I said. He set the dog down. She came to sit next to my chair, which I took as a small but meaningful vote of confidence. "I'm wiped out," he said, rolling his neck. "Portland traffic is a nightmare. Is there anything to eat?" "We need to talk first." He paused at the edge of the couch. His expression shifted into something practiced. A slight furrow, a tilt of the head. Concerned husband mode. "Everything okay?" "Not really," I said. "I called you Wednesday night." "Yeah, I saw that. I was in a late session, I couldn't step out." Someone answered. He went still. It was subtle. If I hadn't been watching for it, I might have read it as nothing, just a pause in the natural rhythm of conversation. But I was watching for it, and I saw it. The stillness in his hands, the way his jaw didn't quite finish whatever movement it had started. "What?" he said. "Someone answered your phone," I said. "A woman. She asked me who told me you were my husband." He opened his mouth, closed it. I watched him decide, in real time, which version of this to try. There must be some mistake," he said. "I had my phone the whole time. I don't know what." "Her name is Bridget," I said. "She lives in Portland. She's been seeing you for 2 years. She has your key. She has 2 years of texts, and she knows your schedule better than I do, which, honestly, isn't hard, since I apparently don't know your schedule at all." The color went out of his face the way it does in the cold. Gradually. Then all at once. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I said. "I've watched a lot of people explain things like this. I'm pretty familiar with how the explanations go." I stood up from the chair. "I'm going to stay at my mother's for a few days. While I'm gone, you should find somewhere else to stay, because when I come back, I'd like you not to be here." Wait, you're not even going to let me." "Let you what?" He just stood there. The dog was still sitting next to where I'd been, looking up at him with considerably less sympathy than he was hoping for. "I love you," he said. It came out desperate. Then, like he'd reached for it because it was the only thing left in his pocket. "I know you think you do," I said. "Or at least I know you want me to believe that." I picked up my bag from beside the chair, already packed, which I think he noticed, and I walked toward the door. He said my name. I turned around, just once. I filed the paperwork yesterday, I said. You'll hear from my attorney next week. And then I left. I want to tell you that the weeks that followed were clean and simple, because that's the version I'd have liked. But that's not how it goes. He called my mother's house. He sent emails that started apologetic and slowly, over the course of 2 weeks, turned into something that sounded more like negotiation. He wanted to talk. He wanted to explain. He had a list of things he needed me to understand. I read every email once and forwarded them to my attorney. My mother didn't say much, which was the kindest thing she could have done. She made coffee in the mornings and didn't push. She let me sit on her back porch and stare at the yard for however long I needed. On the 4th day, she put her hand on my shoulder while I was doing exactly that and said, "You handled it right." That was all. It was enough. Bridget texted me once, about 2 weeks in. She said she was sorry for her part in it even though she hadn't known. I believed her. I told her she had nothing to apologize to me for, and I meant that. Whatever anger I had, it was not for her. It was for him. For the particular kind of cowardice it takes to build a double life, not out of hatred or desperation, but out of pure, quiet convenience. For the way he'd looked at me across our own dining table 100 times while carrying all of it. For the anniversary dinner in March, where he'd ordered the good wine and said he was glad we'd found each other. I think about that dinner sometimes. I think about what he was thinking while he said it. I try not to stay in that space too long. The divorce was final on a Thursday afternoon. My attorney texted me when the paperwork cleared. I was at my desk, drafting a motion on someone else's dissolution. This is the particular strange intimacy of my job, and I read the text, set my phone face down, and finished the paragraph I was in the middle of. Then I got up, walked to the window, looked out at the gray Chicago November, and breathed. That was it. Not fireworks, not collapse, just breath. A colleague stopped by my desk later and asked if I was all right. I told her it was a long week. She nodded and left a coffee on my desk and didn't ask anything else, which was perfect. I went home to my apartment. My apartment, in my name now, the paperwork settled, the mortgage refinanced, every trace of a shared life reduced to its legal components, and I sat on the couch with the dog and a bowl of soup I'd picked up on the way home. It was dark by 5. The city lights came in through the window, that particular Chicago glow that manages to feel like company even when you're alone. I thought about the version of this I'd have written 2 years ago, the one where I was the woman who didn't see it coming, who waited and wondered and forgave and waited again. I know that woman. I've sat across from her in conference rooms. I've handed her tissues and told her to take her time. I felt for her in a way I didn't always show at work because there's a professional distance you learn to maintain, a necessary remove. There's no professional distance from your own life. What I know now, what this particular year taught me in the most expensive possible way, is that preparing for the worst is not pessimism. It's care. The 2 years I spent learning this job, learning how marriages come apart and what you do when they do, were not preparation I ever wanted to use. But I used them, and when the moment came, I was not the woman sitting on the kitchen floor. I mean, I was. For about 20 minutes, I was exactly that woman. But I got up. That's the thing I want to say, if I'm being honest. Not that I did everything perfectly. Not that I was never scared or humiliated or lying awake at 3 in the morning trying to figure out what had been real. But that I got up. I made the calls I needed to make. I gathered what I needed to gather, and when he walked through the door expecting to walk back into a life he'd been quietly dismantling for 2 years, I was already standing on the other side of it. I don't know if that counts as winning. I know what I lost. I know that some mornings it's still the first thing I think about before I've even opened my eyes, that particular half second before memory catches up with consciousness and you're still in the life you used to have. But I also know that I didn't wait for him to decide. I didn't let him come home and manage me, spin me, ask me to understand. I walked out the door I chose on the day I chose with everything I needed already in hand. And maybe that's not winning, but it's mine. There's a version of this story where I fall apart. I've thought about her a lot, that version of me, the one who stays on the kitchen floor, who calls him back crying, who lets him come home and explain his way back into the life he'd been quietly stealing from. She wasn't far away. For about 20 minutes on a Wednesday night, She was exactly where I was sitting. What pulled me off that floor wasn't courage, not at first. It was something quieter. A sense, almost cold, almost professional, that what happened next was going to matter, and that I could not afford to be careless with it. That's not a feeling most people would call strength, but I think it was the beginning of it. I've watched enough people go through this at work to know that the ones who get hurt the worst aren't always the ones with the hardest situations. Sometimes it's the ones who wait, who give the benefit of the doubt past the point where the doubt has earned it, who are so committed to being fair that they hand the other person every advantage. I had been that person for 4 years without knowing what I was doing. I was not going to be her again. What my husband did was a specific kind of wrong, not violent, not dramatic, but calculated. He made choices every single day for 2 years that cost him nothing and cost me everything I thought I had. And the reason he could make those choices without consequence for that long was because I was not paying attention in the right way. I trusted him not because he'd earned it, but because trusting him was easier than asking questions I was afraid of. That's on me. I don't say that to be hard on myself. I say it because it's true, and because the truth of it is actually the most useful thing I got out of all of this. Bridget paid attention. When she found that photograph, she sat with her discomfort instead of explaining it away. She waited. She watched. And when my number came through on his phone, she made a decision in real time that I think took more integrity than most people give her credit for. She didn't have to answer. She didn't have to call me back. She chose honesty when it would have been much easier not to. I think about the two of us, strangers, connected by a man who'd been dishonest with both of us, talking for 47 minutes like we were solving a problem together because we were. There was something in that conversation that felt, despite everything, almost dignified. We did not fall apart. We made a plan. We did the right thing, even though neither of us had asked to be in a position where doing the right thing was required. That's what I come back to when I think about what this year taught me. Not about him. I spent enough time thinking about him. But about what it takes to hold yourself together when the floor drops out. You need to know what you actually value. You need to be honest enough with yourself to see what's in front of you even when it's ugly. And you need the will to act on what you know instead of waiting for someone else to make the first move. I made the calls. I walked into my attorney's office. I packed my bag before he landed. None of that was easy. But all of it was mine. And when he walked through that door, full of confidence and a weekend's worth of manufactured normalcy, he walked into a situation I had already decided. That's the only part of this I would keep if I could.